Hi, my name is Siobhan. Sorry, this is the only way I could figure out how to do this. So this is my case study. I hope you can see it. So, my student, I named him Skylar. That's not his real name, but he's 4 years old. Well, he's turning 5 in December, actually. His biological parents no longer have custody. They were involved with alcohol and drugs when he was born, and so he was placed in foster care, and then he was adopted to a really good family. He is diagnosed with autism and speech and language impairment, and then he might be diagnosed with intellectual disability soon, but we're still testing for that and doing some assessments with him. His developmental domains in the beginning and milestones in the beginning were good. I mean, he sat alone and crawled at 6 months. He walked at 15 months, said his first words at 9 months, and then he became toilet trained at 3 years old. He's passed vision and hearing tests. That's not a concern right now. So his environmental and educational setting right now, we're in an SDC self-contained classroom, and it's actually really unique because I have a program called Heartworks. So 3 days a week we have typically developing students who come in and they act as role models. They have more language, more social skills usually, and so they come Tuesday through Thursday, whereas my SDC students come every single day. And so that is kind of helping him learn social skills a little bit more. He sees like the other students. He's very observant, so he sees them and like I give them praise for requesting appropriately or for having nice hands appropriately. And so then he sees that, and obviously he wants that praise, so that definitely helps a little bit. So he had a lot of behaviors that I wanted to target, but the main one up there, it says that he screams and yells no a lot. And then sometimes like he'll like scream, yell no, and then he'll just like kind of shut down after that. He'll just go like, and like he knows how to talk. Like he has a lot of vocabulary, and like he uses probably 6 to 10 word sentences, but he'll just like shut down sometimes and like will refuse to talk, will refuse to do anything. So that was the main one, like screaming and yelling no. And then the social skill one that I wanted to target was taking toys away from his peers. So he would just like grab it, from his peers' hands. So I wanted to teach him how to do that appropriately. Some triggers and antecedents for him. He doesn't like receiving help for a lot of things, like unless he specifically like asks, like taking, the glue cap off the glue. Like if I try to do that like for him, before he has a chance, then he doesn't like that. He'll like say like, no, I want to do it, and he'll start whining and stuff. Being touched, like some of my peers, I'm still having a hard time like getting them to understand that if he's in a behavior, don't touch him, unless like he's like requesting a hug. But if he's in a behavior, he's not doing that, obviously. And so I'm still trying to have them remember that. Also, if he was planning on doing something and someone else does it before him, so if like he was gonna put away a toy that was on the floor, but then a peer like comes up and does it before him, and then he gets upset, especially if it's dinosaurs, because he loves dinosaurs. Or like one time I opened his applesauce for him because when he does it, kind of like flies everywhere, and he like shut down because like he was planning on doing that. But I like told him like beforehand. I tried to like front load him, like, oh, I'm gonna open this because it's messy, but still that didn't work out very well. And then obviously being given a demand is a trigger for him, and then being told to go back and walk in class can most of the time be a trigger for him. Like he likes to run, all over the place, and so when we tell him to go back and walk, then he'll just like, kind of shut down or start screaming and yelling, So I took some ABC data. I also took some duration data, the minutes that he's like screaming and yelling no for, and then the ABC data for the taking away the peers' toys and being given a demand. So one example was that he was told to take his jacket off. I mean, we were outside. This was like in the beginning of the case study. We were outside. It was hot. He was sweating. And he was like screaming, no, crying. And then, afterwards, after we finally got him to calm down, we're like, you don't have to, just like request appropriately. Like, I want to keep it on, please. And so then we just told him that he could do that in the future. Like, he didn't have to take it off, but I mean, he looked hot. So that's why we asked him to. Another one was that he was running in class. So I already talked about that, and he was told to go back and walk. So he started yelling no. He continued running towards the preferred toys. So teacher had to kind of like block him off from running. And then he started crying, of course, and yelling no. He threw himself on the ground. And so we just waited him out. And then he had to go back and walk like multiple times between the areas that he was running before he could start playing again. Another one was we were doing this little book activity. They had to count and then circle the number of how many items there were in the book. And then we were going to a school play actually after this. It was a Peter Pan play. And so he had one last page and all the other students had already finished. He had one last page, and so we were waiting for him. And he just refused to do the last page. He was just like, no. I mean, we were waiting, you know. And so then he proceeded to scream, cry. He threw the book off the table. And so then one of my paras stayed behind and the rest of us went to the play, and she obviously, you know, told him, you have to do this before we go. And it only took him probably like 4 minutes to calm down and do the page because they joined us pretty quickly. And then I just talked to him like, hey, if you had like, you know, just done the page beforehand, we wouldn't have had to do this, and you would have been able to come with the whole class because that's what he wanted. So, sorry, it's so hard to see. But that's my baseline for the duration. And so each period, like each like line is 4 days, and each like mark on the chart is a day. And so like the first week he had 10 minutes of screaming and crying and refusal, and like 13, 8, 7. And then kind of by the third week it was starting to go down a little bit. Like you see 5, you see 3 right there. That was a really good day. So it just like depended. And then it also depends how much sleep he got the night before. So I try to like help mom and talk to her about that because sometimes he doesn't get a lot of sleep. This is baseline for rate of the replacement behavior, so saying okay. So as you can see, it's pretty low right now. Week 3, I mean, he had one time that he said it 3 times in one day, and that was pretty good. This is the baseline for rate of the social skill target, which is appropriately asking, so like tapping a peer on the shoulder and asking them, can I use that please? And so that's pretty low too for the baseline. We have a lot of zeros. Let's see, in the second week, he did it 2 times on one day, so that was pretty good. So like I said, his communication replacement behavior, or FERB, was saying okay. So I just taught that through modeling. Like I would say okay, and then I would point to him and say, okay, your turn, and he would have to say okay. And then I kind of faded that. I would take away the your turn, and I would just point to him, and he would have to say okay. And then eventually I would just say okay, and then I would just like wait for him to say okay. And he did pretty good about that most of the days. Again, depended on how much sleep and stuff he was getting at home. So I reinforced this by giving him stamps and stickers, giving him hugs. He loves hugs. I would move his name up on the behavior chart if he did it like a lot in one day. I'd like really make it a big deal. I modeled with other students, like if he was having a hard day, like I would like have them say okay, and I would give them stamps, you know, and like he saw that he really wanted the stamps, obviously, so then it would help him kind of come along, even though it took like some minutes sometimes, but he would come along usually. And then his social skill behavior, like I said, was tapping a peer on the shoulder, asking, can I use that please, instead of just taking it. So I taught this through circle time. Like all of the students would come up and we would all model. Like I'd have like 2 students, one would have a toy, like a highly preferred toy for him, like a dinosaur, stuffed animal, and then they would model, and then he had a chance to come up obviously and do that. Again, stamps and stickers, the behavior chart, and also talking with mom. Like if he had like a really good day, I'd be like, oh, I'm going to call your mom later today, and that would make him really happy because they have a really good relationship. So I would tell him like, oh, I'll tell her that you did really good today. And then at home, I think he would get reinforcements too in the form of food. This is his post-treatment for the impeding behavior, which is the screaming. So, I mean, he kind of had a late extinction burst week 2 that I did this. But that was also, I want to say this was the week after daylight savings, which was like really hard for him. So week 2, you can see there's a spike, but then it goes down. Whoops. But then it goes down. And then by week 3, it's like staying pretty low. Like it's 6 minutes, 5 minutes, 3 and 4, guesstimating. And then the post treatment for intervention for the replacement behavior for saying okay. Like there was, kind of some low periods, but then like a lot of spikes also. So that was good, especially week 3 towards the end. He was reaching like 10 times a day, which is just fantastic for him. And then this is for using the social scale intervention. So tapping up here on the shoulder and asking appropriately to use a toy. So week 1, I mean, he still had some low periods. Week 2, we say a little bit higher. Week 3 and week 2 are kind of similar, but he was doing it about 3 times a day on average, which is really good for him. And then these are my references, and then I have all the school participant patient checklist and the consent form all on here too. So yeah, thank you.